The pale blue sun of Earth looked different through the viewport than it did in the educational programs. Tahoe pressed his six-fingered hand against the transparent material, watching as the human shuttlecraft approached the Nalfori diplomatic vessel. His heart beat faster in his chest. Although he had studied humans extensively during the journey from Nalfor Prime, this would be the first time seeing one in person. "Tahoe, move away from there," his father said sharply. Ambassador Kulo's voice carried the distinctive clicking undertone that indicated displeasure. "Return to your quarters immediately." Tahoe's upper shoulders slumped. "But father, the humans are arriving. I've been studying their language and customs for—" "That is not your concern," his father interrupted. "The diplomatic party will meet the humans. You will remain in your assigned space." Tahoe knew better than to argue. He pushed himself away from the viewport using his powerful arms, his body floating gracefully in the low-gravity environment maintained for Nalfori comfort. Without functional lower limbs, the reduced gravity was the only freedom of movement he knew. As he propelled himself down the corridor toward his private quarters, he heard the whispers of the diplomatic staff. "The ambassador's son. Such a shame. Bad genetics. Should have been left on Nalfor." Tahoe pretended not to hear, as he always did. Among the Nalfori, physical perfection was deeply valued. His condition, a rare genetic mutation affecting the development of his lower limbs, made him an embarrassment to his family and his species. He knew his father had only brought him to Earth because leaving him behind would have created even more gossip among the elite families of Nalfor Prime. In his quarters, Tahoe activated his personal terminal and continued his study of human languages. The data stream washed over him as he absorbed English vocabulary and syntax. The humans were fascinating, physically weaker than Nalfori, shorter-lived, technologically less advanced, yet they had achieved remarkable things. Their art, their music, their literature, all of it spoke of a creativity that sometimes seemed lacking in his own people's rigid cultural structures. 3 days passed. The diplomatic mission established itself in the newly constructed embassy on Earth's surface. Tahoe's quarters had been specially designed with handrails and low-gravity generators, allowing him to move about without assistance. But the space was isolated, tucked away in a remote wing of the embassy where visitors would not see him. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. Lieutenant Ju Park had been assigned as the human liaison to the Nalfori embassy. Her job was to ensure the aliens had everything they needed and to help them navigate the complexities of Earth politics and culture. She was thorough, methodical, and curious, 3 qualities that made her both excellent at her job and prone to exploration. While touring the embassy's eastern wing, she noticed a section that wasn't on her official floor plan. "What's down this corridor?" she asked her Nalfori guide. The tall alien shifted uncomfortably. "Private quarters. Not part of the tour." Jiwoo nodded politely, but made a mental note to investigate later. As a diplomat, she knew when something was being deliberately hidden. That evening, after the day's official functions had ended, Jiwoo returned to the eastern wing. The corridor was empty, the lighting dimmed for the night cycle. She moved quietly, her military training evident in her careful steps. The door at the end of the hallway was unlocked, a surprising security oversight. She hesitated only briefly before pushing it open. Inside, the gravity felt strange, lighter, almost buoyant. The room was spacious and well-appointed, with curved Nalfori furniture and several terminals displaying information in the complex symbolic language of the aliens. But what caught Juwoo's attention was the young Nalfori floating near the ceiling, manipulating a 3-dimensional star map projected in the air. "Hello," she said softly. The alien startled, spinning in the low gravity to face her. He was clearly younger than the other Nalfori she had met, his skin a paler shade of the species' characteristic blue, the translucent quality more pronounced. His upper body was developed like others of his kind, but his lower limbs were noticeably smaller, underdeveloped. "You are human," he said in perfect English, with only a slight clicking accent. You should not be here. Ju smiled gently. I'm Lieutenant Ju Park. The young Nelthori hesitated, then pushed himself down from the ceiling using a series of practiced movements with his arms. I am Tahoe, third offspring of Ambassador Kulo. He landed gracefully on a cushioned platform near Ju. My father will be displeased that you have found me. Why would he be displeased? Ju asked, though she had already guessed the answer. Tahoe gestured to his lower limbs. I am not complete. My people believe physical imperfection reflects poorly on our species. My presence here is not to be known to humans. Ju frowned. That seems unfair to you. It is our way. Tahoe replied simply, but something in his voice suggested he didn't entirely agree. Ju looked around the room, noting the many terminals filled with information about Earth. You've been studying us. Yes, Tahoe's eyes brightened. Humans are fascinating. You adapt to limitations instead of hiding from them. Your species embraces diversity of form and function in ways Nelthori cannot comprehend. You speak excellent English, Ju observed. I have studied 12 Earth languages, Tahoe said without pride. I have little else to occupy my time. Ju's diplomatic training had taught her to recognize opportunities for connection. Here was a young Nelthori, isolated from both his own people and humans, yet eager to learn and engage. Would you like to see more of Earth than just information on terminals? She asked. Tahoe's expression changed to something Ju couldn't quite interpret, hope, perhaps, or longing. That is not possible. I cannot move effectively outside this environment. Ju thought for a moment. On Earth, people with limited mobility use tools to help them move independently. Have your people considered something similar? My condition is rare among Nelthori, Tahoe explained. Our medical technology focuses on genetic perfection, not adaptation to imperfection. An idea began to form in Ju's mind. Tahoe, would you allow me to help you experience more of Earth? I think I might know a way. Before Tahoe could respond, the door slid open. Ambassador Kulo stood in the entrance, his tall figure imposing even in the dimmed light. 2 security officers flanked him. Lieutenant Park, the ambassador's voice was cold. You have entered a restricted area without authorization. Explain yourself. Ju straightened, falling back on her diplomatic training. Ambassador, I was completing my tour of the facility and met your son. We were having a fascinating discussion about cultural exchange. There is no authorized cultural exchange with my offspring, the ambassador said. This area is private. Tahoe floated slightly forward. Father, Lieutenant Park has been most educational. Did you know humans have developed extensive technologies to assist those with physical limitations? The ambassador's gaze hardened. Tahoe, you will remain silent. Lieutenant Park, you will leave immediately and report to your superiors. This incident will be formally addressed through diplomatic channels. Ju knew when to retreat strategically. Of course, Ambassador. My apologies for the misunderstanding. She turned to Tahoe and bowed slightly. It was a pleasure meeting you. As she was escorted from the room, Ju glanced back at Tahoe. The young Nelthori watched her go, his expression unreadable to human eyes. But something passed between them, an understanding, a promise. This wouldn't be their last meeting, and next time, she would bring something that might change everything for the young alien who couldn't walk. Lieutenant Ju Park stood at the entrance of the United Nations Adaptive Technology Center, watching rain splash against the windows. The formal complaint from Ambassador Kulo had been serious, but her superiors had merely issued a warning. The diplomatic incident was minor compared to the potential opportunity she saw. Lieutenant Park, I'm Dr. Minho. A tall Korean man in a white coat approached her. You wanted to discuss Nelthori physiology. Thank you for meeting me, Ju said, shaking his hand. What I'm about to ask might sound unusual. Dr. Minho led her through the facility where humans with various mobility challenges tested new adaptive technologies, robotic exoskeletons, advanced wheelchairs, and neural interfaces filled the laboratory spaces. "So you've met a young Nalfori with undeveloped lower limbs," Dr. Minho said after Juwu explained the situation. "And his people have no equivalent to our mobility aids. They see his condition as something to hide, not accommodate," Juwu replied. "But I think the Nalfori physiology is different from ours," Dr. Minho cautioned. "Their bone structure, muscle density, center of gravity, everything would need special consideration." "But it's possible." Dr. Minho smiled. "Adaptive technology is all about solving unique problems. I'll need detailed measurements and physiological data." "That's the difficult part," Juwu admitted. "His father won't allow official contact. Then we'll have to be creative." 3 days later, Juwu returned to the Nalfori embassy for scheduled diplomatic meetings. The ambassadorial staff watched her carefully, clearly aware of her previous unauthorized exploration. She maintained perfect professionalism throughout the tedious trade discussions. During a break, she slipped a small data chip to a junior Nalfori aide. "Please ensure this reaches Taiho," she whispered. "It's educational material about human culture. For his studies." The aide looked uncertain but nodded slightly. That evening, Taiho accessed the data chip in his private quarters. Instead of cultural information, he found a message from Lieutenant Park. "Tahoe, I believe humans might help you move independently outside your quarters. If you're interested, run the enclosed program. It will create a detailed scan of your physiology without requiring medical equipment. The data will help us design something for you. Delete this message after reading." Juwu. Tahoe hesitated. Cooperating with the human would certainly anger his father. Yet the possibility of independence, of experiencing more than his isolated existence. He ran the program. 2 weeks passed. Juwu and Dr. Minho worked nights and weekends on their secret project. The scan data provided everything they needed to create a custom mobility device for Tahoe's unique physiology. "It's ready," Dr. Minho finally announced, unveiling their creation. The device looked nothing like a standard human wheelchair. It was lower to the ground, with a contoured seat designed for Tahoe's different body proportions. The wheels were larger and wider, with a specialized suspension system. The controls were adapted for 6-fingered hands, and the whole thing could collapse into a compact form for easy transport. "It's beautiful," Juwu said. "But how do we get it to him?" The answer came unexpectedly. Ambassador Kulo announced a cultural exhibition at the embassy, showcasing Nalfori art and technology. Such events required extensive preparations, creating rare moments when security would be distracted. On the day of the exhibition, Juwu arrived early, transporting the collapsed wheelchair in a diplomatic case. Security scanners would show only metal components and electronics, nothing suspicious for diplomatic equipment. Using the confusion of event setup, she slipped down the now familiar corridor to Tahoe's quarters. The door was unlocked as before. Tahoe was waiting, his expression anxious. "Lieutenant Park, your message said it was urgent." "It is," Juwu said, quickly closing the door. She opened the case, revealing the wheelchair. "This is for you." Tahoe floated closer, his eyes wide. This is the device you mentioned. For movement?" "Yes. It's designed specifically for your physiology." Juwu quickly assembled the wheelchair. "We don't have much time before your father realizes I'm here." Tahoe touched the chair hesitantly. "Will it work outside this low-gravity environment?" "That's what we're about to find out." Juwu showed him how to position himself in the seat, how to use the controls, how to navigate forward and backward, how to turn. Tahoe learned quickly. Within minutes, he was moving around his quarters with growing confidence. "This is remarkable," he whispered, a clicking sound of emotion in his voice. "I've never moved independently outside this room. Would you like to try?" "Right now?" Juwu asked. Fear and excitement crossed Tahoe's face. "The exhibition. My father would never allow it." "Sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than permission," Juwu said with a smile. Besides, wouldn't your presence at a cultural exhibition be appropriate? You're an important part of Nalthori culture too. Tahoe made a decision. He guided the wheelchair toward the door. Show me how to adjust the gravity compensators. I want to see the exhibition. Together, they made final adjustments to the chair's settings. Then Ju opened the door, checking the corridor. It's clear. Are you ready? Tahoe moved forward, leaving his quarters for the first time since arriving on Earth. The sensation was overwhelming. Freedom, control, independence. Each push of the controls sent him gliding smoothly down the corridor. Ju walked beside him, ready to help if needed, but Tahoe. They reached the main exhibition hall just as the first human guests were arriving. The room was filled with Nalthori art pieces, technological displays, and cultural artifacts. Nalthori officials moved among the guests, explaining the significance of various items. A sudden hush fell over the room as people noticed Tahoe. The young Nalthori in the wheelchair was an unexpected sight. Ambassador Kulo turned, his expression shifting from confusion to anger as he spotted his son. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, approaching rapidly. "Lieutenant Park, you overstep your authority again." Ju stood her ground. "Ambassador, your son expressed interest in participating in this cultural exchange. As liaison, I facilitated his request. This device," Kulo gestured dismissively at the wheelchair, "this is not approved technology." "Father," Tahoe said, his voice surprisingly steady, "this device allows me to move independently, to experience more than my quarters, to contribute." "You embarrass us," Kulo hissed quietly. "Return to your room immediately." "Excuse me, Ambassador," a new voice interrupted. The United Nations Secretary-General had approached during the exchange. "Is this young Nalthori part of your delegation? I don't believe we've been introduced." Caught in a diplomatic bind, Ambassador Kulo hesitated. To dismiss his son now would create an incident with the Secretary-General. "This is Tahoe, my son," he finally said. "He is joining us for this special occasion." The Secretary-General smiled warmly at Tahoe. "A pleasure to meet you. What an interesting mobility device you have. Is this Nalthori technology?" "Human technology," Tahoe replied. "Adapted for Nalthori physiology. A collaboration between our peoples." "Fascinating. I'd love to hear more about it." As Tahoe began explaining the wheelchair to the Secretary-General, Ju caught the young Nalthori's eye. A small victory, but significant. The first barrier had been broken. There would be consequences later, but for now, Tahoe was experiencing something he had never known before: being seen, being included, being valued. The revolution had begun with wheels. The morning sunlight filtered through the high windows of the embassy garden. Tahoe guided his wheelchair along the smooth path between rows of earth flowers and transplanted Nalthori vegetation. 3 weeks had passed since the exhibition, and much had changed. Ambassador Kulo had been furious that night, ordering Tahoe back to his quarters immediately after the Secretary-General moved on to other guests. The official reprimand for Lieutenant Park had been severe. She was temporarily removed from direct embassy duties. But the diplomatic damage was already done. The Secretary-General himself had expressed interest in Tahoe's adaptive technology, putting the ambassador in a difficult position. Unable to isolate his son completely without raising questions, Kulo had reluctantly allowed Tahoe limited access to certain areas of the embassy, including the enclosed garden during off-peak hours. Tahoe stopped his chair beside a patch of bright yellow flowers, breathing in their sweet scent. On Nalthor Prime, flowers were typically pale and subtle. Earth plants seemed to celebrate their existence with bold colors and strong fragrances. "Those are called sunflowers," said a familiar voice. Tahoe turned his wheelchair to see Lieutenant Park approaching along the garden path. He clicked with surprise and pleasure. "Lieutenant, I did not expect to see you here." Ju smiled, kneeling down beside one of the tall flowers. "My diplomatic restriction ended yesterday. I'm back on regular duty." She glanced around. though I'm probably pushing my luck by seeking you out directly. My father is in meetings all morning, Taiho assured her. The security staff has been instructed to allow me garden access between sunrise and midday. How are you finding the chair? Any issues? Taiho demonstrated by spinning in a quick, controlled circle. It functions perfectly. Dr. Minho's adaptations to the gravity compensators are excellent. Jiwoo noticed the chair had several new modifications, a small storage compartment on one side, and what looked like a custom-built holder for a null-for communication device. You've made some changes. Yes, Taiho clicked with pride. I researched human adaptive technologies and created some additions. The embassy engineers were surprisingly helpful once I explained what I needed. They moved together down the garden path, Taiho setting a comfortable pace in his wheelchair while Jiwoo walked alongside. The young Nalfori seemed transformed from the isolated, hesitant being she'd first met. He sat straighter, spoke more confidently, and his eyes took in everything around him with undisguised curiosity. The sky looks different from here, Taiho said, tilting his face toward the blue expanse above. In my quarters, I only saw it through view screens. It's more alive out here. Everything looks different when you can choose your own perspective, Jiwoo replied. They reached a small pond where earth fish swam among null-for aquatic plants, another experimental cultural exchange. Taiho maneuvered his chair close to the edge, watching the creatures move through the water. My father has received messages from the High Council, Taiho said suddenly, his voice lower. They are displeased about my public appearance. Jiwoo frowned. Because of your condition. Yes, but also because of this. He gestured to the wheelchair. They see using human technology as beneath us, a suggestion that null-for solutions are inadequate. That's ridiculous, Jiwoo said. Cultural exchange means learning from each other. Not everyone sees it that way. Taiho turned to face her directly. There are those who believe contact with humans will weaken us, that we should maintain our superiority by remaining separate. Before Jiwoo could respond, a shadow fell across them. Ambassador Kulo stood on the path, two security officers behind him. His translucent skin flushed dark with anger. Lieutenant Park, his voice was cold and precise. You were not scheduled for garden duty today. Jiwoo stood up straight. Ambassador, I was conducting a routine check of the facilities and encountered your son. We were discussing botanical differences between our worlds. Indeed. The ambassador did not sound convinced. Taiho, return to your quarters immediately. Lieutenant, your presence is required in the diplomatic offices. Taiho hesitated, then nodded respectfully to his father. As he turned his wheelchair to leave, he accidentally brushed against a flowering bush, causing several petals to fall onto his lap. The ambassador's expression darkened further at this disorder. Wait, Jiwoo said, stepping forward. Ambassador, I've been authorized to invite Taiho to participate in an educational exchange at the United Nations Youth Center tomorrow. Several Earth children with similar mobility adaptations will be present. The Secretary General specifically requested his attendance. This was not entirely true. Jiwoo had suggested the exchange, and the Secretary General had approved it, but there had been no specific request for Taiho. Still, the diplomatic implication was clear. Refusing would create an incident. The ambassador's skin flushed darker, then lightened as he controlled his emotion. This is highly irregular. Taiho is not an official representative. Of course, Jiwoo agreed smoothly. It's purely educational, an opportunity for mutual understanding between our younger generations. Taiho remained silent, but Jiwoo could see hope in his expression. After a long pause, Ambassador Kulo nodded stiffly. Very well. Taiho may attend, with appropriate security and medical personnel. Thank you, Father, Taiho said quietly. Return to your quarters now, the ambassador repeated. We will discuss preparation for this event. As Taiho wheeled past Jiwoo, he subtly extended one six-fingered hand and gently touched her arm. a brief gesture of gratitude. Then he was gone, following the garden path back toward the embassy building. The ambassador dismissed his security team with a gesture, waiting until they were out of earshot before addressing Juwu directly. Lieutenant Park, your interference in Nalthori affairs is becoming problematic. Ambassador, I assure you my only interest is in fostering positive relations between our peoples. My son is not a diplomatic tool, Kulo said sharply. Nor is his condition an opportunity for humans to demonstrate their supposed compassion. Juwu met his gaze steadily. With respect, Ambassador, your son is an intelligent, curious individual who deserves the same opportunities as anyone else. The wheelchair simply allows him access to those opportunities. You do not understand our ways, Kulo said. On Nalthor, those with physical imperfections are cared for, but they do not participate in public life. It is our tradition. Traditions can evolve, Juwu suggested carefully. Perhaps this is an opportunity for both our cultures to... The ambassador was silent for a moment, his expression unreadable to human eyes. The youth exchange will proceed as approved. But I caution you, Lieutenant, your career here is balanced on a very thin edge. Do not push further. With that warning, he turned and walked away, leaving Juwu alone by the pond. The next day dawned bright and clear. Taiho waited nervously at the embassy entrance, his wheelchair freshly polished for the occasion. He wore traditional Nalthori formal attire, adapted to fit comfortably while seated. When the transport arrived, Juwu stepped out first, followed by 3 Earth children in various mobility devices. One girl in a wheelchair similar to Taho's, a boy using exoskeletal leg supports, and another child navigating with a sophisticated hover platform. Taho, Juwu called with a warm smile. I'd like you to meet some friends from the youth center. As the young Nalthori wheeled forward to meet the human children, his father watched from the embassy window above. For the first time, Ambassador Kulo saw his son not as an embarrassment to be hidden, but as a pioneer venturing into new territory, a bridge between worlds that adults had not imagined possible. The horizon was expanding for them all. The United Nations Youth Center buzzed with excitement. Today marked the 3rd official meeting of the Earth Nalthori Youth Exchange Program. What had begun as a single-day visit 2 months earlier had evolved into a regular cultural initiative, with Taho at its center. Taho guided his wheelchair through the main hall where human and Nalthori children gathered in small groups. His chair now featured several upgrades, including a height adjustment mechanism that allowed him to raise himself to eye level when speaking with standing humans or Nalthori. Taho, called Minji, a 12-year-old girl who used a lightweight carbon fiber wheelchair. She raced over to him, expertly maneuvering between the other children. We got approval for the adaptive sports demonstration next week. The Secretary General will attend. Taho clicked with happiness, the Nalthori expression of joy. Excellent news. Have you decided which sports to showcase? Wheelchair basketball, seated volleyball, and we thought maybe you could demonstrate some Nalthori game adapted for mobility devices. Taho nodded thoughtfully. I have been researching our traditional sphere chase game. With some modifications, it could work well. As they discussed the details, Lieutenant Juwu Park watched from the doorway. The past 2 months had transformed her career. Initially facing disciplinary action for her unauthorized interactions with Taho, she now led the official Earth Nalthori Adaptive Technologies Initiative. The unexpected success of Taho's story had caught the attention of both human and Nalthori leadership. Quite a change from when you smuggled that first wheelchair into the embassy, observed Dr. Minho, joining her at the entrance. Juwu smiled. I still can't believe Ambassador Kulo didn't have me deported. Public opinion can be a powerful motivator, Dr. Minho replied. Once the Secretary General expressed personal interest, the Nalthori couldn't very well hide Taho away again. Across the room, Taho was showing Minji and several other children a holographic display of Nalthori architecture. His confidence had grown remarkably since his first nervous venture outside the embassy. He spoke clearly and passionately, occasionally using his hands to emphasize points in the distinctly Nalfori manner. Lieutenant Park, a deep voice interrupted her observations. Ambassador Kulo approached, accompanied by 3 high-ranking Nalfori officials. May I present delegates Runa, Seal, and Daho from the Nalfori High Council. Juwu bowed respectfully. Welcome to Earth. We're honored by your visit. The tallest delegate, Runa, studied the room with critical eyes. This program was not approved by the Council. We have come to evaluate its appropriateness. Of course, Juwu said smoothly. Please feel free to observe today's activities. The children would be delighted to answer any questions. As if on cue, Tahoe noticed the delegation and wheeled smoothly toward them. Honored delegates, welcome to Earth. Would you care for a tour of our facilities? The delegates exchanged glances, clearly surprised by Tahoe's confidence and mobility. On Nalfor, he would have been kept from public view, especially from high officials. That would be acceptable. Delegate Seal. For the next hour, Tahoe led the delegates through the youth center, explaining various activities and adaptive technologies. Human children demonstrated their mobility devices, showing how they had been modified for different needs and abilities. Nalforid children who had recently joined the program shared their experiences of Earth culture. Throughout the tour, Juwu noticed the delegates' reactions shifting from initial discomfort to genuine curiosity. When Tahoe demonstrated how he could navigate stairs using the special tracks on his wheelchair, Delegate Daho actually clicked with surprise and approval. The tour ended in the technology lab, where human and Nalfori engineers worked together designing new adaptive devices. As you can see, Tahoe explained, we're developing technologies that combine the best of both our worlds. Human ingenuity with Nalfori materials and energy systems. Delegate Runa examined a prototype exoskeleton designed for Nalfori physiology. This is remarkable engineering. Why has such technology not been developed on Nalfor? A momentary silence fell over the room. It was Tahoe who finally answered. Honored delegate, on Nalfor, those with physical differences are cared for, but hidden away. There was never a need for such devices because we were not expected to participate in public life. His voice remained respectful but firm. Humans approach physical differences differently. They create tools to enable full participation rather than accepting limitation. Ambassador Kulo tensed, clearly concerned about his son's directness with the High Council delegates. But to everyone's surprise, Delegate Seal nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps this represents a blind spot in our own development, she said. A cultural limitation rather than a technological one. The formal dinner that evening brought together human and Nalfori officials, as well as families from both species. Tahoe sat between Ambassador Kulo and Minji's family, serving as both translator and cultural interpreter when needed. As the meal concluded, the Secretary General rose to speak. 6 months ago, our people signed historic agreements on trade, scientific exchange, and diplomatic relations. Yet perhaps the most meaningful exchange began with a simple act of kindness, a wheelchair designed for a young Nalfori who simply wanted to explore beyond his room. Glasses were raised in a toast to friendship between worlds. As Tahoe raised his own glass, he caught Lieutenant Park's eye across the room. They shared a private smile, remembering the day they had first met, the human who believed in possibility, and the alien boy who dared to dream of moving freely among the stars. Later that evening, as the guests departed, Ambassador Kulo found Juwu in the garden outside the reception hall. Lieutenant Park, he said formally, the High Council has made a decision regarding Tahoe. Juwu's heart sank. She had feared this moment, when Nalfori traditionalists would reassert control, perhaps ordering Tahoe back to Nalfor Prime or restricting his public appearances. They have requested that Tahoe address the full council next month, Kulo continued, to present a formal proposal for an adaptive technology initiative on Nalfor. Juwu couldn't hide her surprise. That's wonderful news. Yes, the ambassador agreed, his voice softening slightly. It seems my son has become something of a pioneer. He paused, looking up at the night sky. I have spent my career representing Nelthori interests on Earth. Yet my own son has perhaps done more for relations between our peoples than all my diplomatic efforts. He's remarkable, Juwu said simply. Yes, Kulo agreed. I believe I am beginning to see that. Across the garden, Teho talked animatedly with a group of human and Nelthori children, his wheelchair raised to match their height. His laughter, a musical clicking sound, carried through the evening air, the sound of barriers falling, of horizons expanding, of worlds changing one wheel revolution at a time. 1 year later, Lieutenant Juwu Park stood at the viewing platform of the newly inaugurated Nelthori Human Research Center. The massive glass and metal structure gleamed in the morning sunlight, its unique architecture blending elements from both worlds. Curved Nelthori arches supported human-designed modular sections, creating a building that seemed to float above its foundations. The center represented the most ambitious joint project between Earth and Nelthor Prime since first contact. Yet it had begun with something much simpler, a wheelchair for a boy who couldn't walk. Admiring the view, a familiar Juwu turned to see Tahoe approaching. His mobility device had evolved considerably from the simple wheelchair she had smuggled into the embassy a year ago. Now he navigated in a sleek hover chair of his own design, which allowed him to adjust his height and position with remarkable precision. The chair incorporated both human adaptive technology and advanced Nelthori gravitational systems. The building is beautiful, Juwu replied. Your design elements really stand out. Tahoe clicked modestly, the Nelthori equivalent of a humble chuckle. I merely suggested a few modifications for universal access. The real architects did the important work. But they both knew this was an understatement. Tahoe had become a leading advocate for what humans called universal design, spaces and technologies created to be accessible and usable by all people regardless of age, size, ability, or species. His unique perspective as both Nelthori and mobility device user had proven invaluable to the project. The first shipment leaves for Nelthor Prime tomorrow, Tahoe said, gesturing toward the manufacturing wing of the complex. 17 different mobility aids designed for various physiologies. The Council expects high demand. I never thought I'd see the day, Juwu admitted. A year ago, your people were hiding those with physical differences. Change comes slowly, then all at once, Tahoe observed. He adjusted his hover chair to match Juwu's height as they moved toward the central atrium. Though some traditionalists still resist. The atrium buzzed with activity. Human and Nelthori engineers worked side by side, testing prototypes and discussing modifications. In one corner, a young Nelthori female with underdeveloped upper limbs was being fitted with an exoskeletal support system. Her expression showed the same wonder Tahoe had displayed when first using his wheelchair, the revelation of new possibilities. Ambassador Kulo stood nearby, deep in conversation with human officials. He had become one of the strongest supporters of the initiative, his previous embarrassment about his son transformed into unmistakable pride. Your father has changed, Juwu noted. We all have, Tahoe replied. When I first came to Earth, I believed my condition was a cosmic punishment. My people taught me that physical perfection reflected spiritual worth. And now I understand that diversity of form creates diversity of perspective. The greatest Nelthori scientific advances of the past year have come from those previously hidden away. We were limiting ourselves by excluding those who experience the world differently. They paused at a display showing before and after images of Nelthori cities. The newer designs featured ramps alongside traditional stairs, wider doorways, and accessible transport systems, changes inspired directly by human approaches to inclusion. The High Council meeting next week will vote on the Universal Education Act, Tahoe said. If approved, all Nelthori with physical differences will gain the right to attend standard schools and universities. Will you attend the vote? Juwu asked. Yes, as the official Earth Nelthori Adaptive Technology Ambassador. Tahoe's voice contained a hint of amused pride at his formal title. They've even adjusted the council chamber so my hover chair can access the speaking platform. A small commotion near the main entrance caught their attention. A group of human children in various mobility devices entered the atrium, led by a familiar face, Minji, now 13, who had been among the first participants in the youth exchange program. Tahoe, she called, wheeling quickly toward them. We're here for the demonstration. Is everything ready? All prepared, he assured her. The test course is set up in the East Wing. Ju watched as Tahoe and Minji led the children toward the testing area, their conversation flowing easily between technical specifications and friendly banter. The relationship between them had grown into a genuine friendship, transcending both species and age differences. Later that afternoon, Ju found herself in the center's small garden, a peaceful space designed with elements from both Earth and Nalfor Prime. Ambassador Kulo joined her as she admired a flowering plant with translucent blue petals. A Nalfori night bloom, he explained. They were Tahoe's mother's favorite. It's beautiful, Ju said. I'm surprised it grows in Earth soil. With proper adaptations, many things can thrive in new environments. The ambassador's words carried an obvious double meaning. Lieutenant Park, I owe you an apology. When you first helped my son, I saw only a diplomatic incident and a cultural violation. Now I see that some traditions deserve to be challenged. He gestured toward the research center beyond the garden walls. Before Tahoe's wheelchair, there were 23 Nalfori citizens with mobility limitations on our entire homeworld who participated in public life. Today, that number exceeds 2,000. Next year, it will be many more. Tahoe did that, Ju said. Not me. You gave him the tools, Kulo corrected. The rest was his courage. The evening celebration brought together the diverse team that had made the research center possible. As darkness fell, the building's exterior illuminated with patterns of light that shifted between human and Nalfori designs. Tahoe took the central platform to address the gathered crowd. His hover chair elevated him to a comfortable speaking height as he gestured to those assembled. 1 year ago, I addressed the Nalfori High Council from a simple wheelchair, he began. I spoke of a different way of seeing disability, not as a limitation to be hidden, but as an experience to be accommodated. I showed them how human technology had given me freedom, and how that freedom had allowed me to contribute to both our societies. He paused, looking around the room at faces both human and Nalfori. Today, we do more than exchange technology. We exchange perspectives. We learn that different bodies experience the universe differently, and that diversity enriches us all. The designs we create here will not just help those with physical differences. They will help everyone by making our worlds more accessible, more adaptable, and more inclusive. As applause filled the room, Ju caught Tahoe's eye across the crowd. They shared a moment of understanding, remembering that first secret meeting, the nervous trip down the embassy corridor, the first taste of independence. My people came to Earth believing we had much to teach humans. Tahoe continued, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. We never expected how much we would learn. Ju smiled. That's the thing about wheels, Tahoe, she whispered to herself, echoing words she had once said to him. They don't just move you forward. They help you see the world from new angles. Outside the research center, a transport prepared to carry the first shipment of mobility devices to Nalfor Prime. Tomorrow, wheels would begin turning on a world that had never known them before, carrying with them not just people, but ideas, possibilities, and the simple, revolutionary concept that everyone deserved a chance to move through the universe.